more I thought about it, I realized fear could be its own stream. We could talk about how fear is crippling for artists in a lot of ways. So as you guys are joining in, I'm gonna finish up. You can hear us. I'm gonna finish up the marketing here, and as always, I like to know where you guys are watching from. So if you guys could put where you're watching in the comments, and we will do a shout out as we begin here. I'm remembering to do the hashtags on Twitch. I always forget that. Whoop.
Oh man, that's smart.
Right? Save out your hashtags, copy paste. And then if you are new to the streams, if you could put, well, I thank you, TJ Kerbo, for following. If you could put at CG Cookie Concept before your question, that would make it a lot easier, especially since Key is going to be moderating today. She'll be able to see the questions or comments that you guys have. And this might turn into more of a conversation, or at least I'm hoping it does, because we're going to be doing not as much talking, but we're going to be doing more discussing about the topic today. So hopefully we can have more of a back and forth rather than us just shouting our opinions at you, and we'll get input from everyone here.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we do a switch off of shout-outs? So Gypsy from Southern Oregon.
Vamera from Spain.
Christy from Oregon.
Sorry, from Oregon.
See if we can do it like rapid fire.
Zane from Ohio.
Nikki Pickle from New York.
Bran from Texas.
Exilian from Italy.
Nicole from Germany.
Wackian from Florida.
Gabby from Bulgaria.
Becca John from Indiana.
Bass from Texas.
And Sergeant Guava from California. Oh, they keep coming. Oh, Sergeant Guava. I still love your name.
Start from California.
Loli from Brazil.
Blands from California.
Beautiful. Okay. So, as we get started here, I think it's important to note that what we're going to be talking about might sound very critical, and I need you guys not to get defensive and let this absorb into what we're saying, because we're not going to be saying a lot of these things to be mean or to ridicule you as an artist. If anything, these are to help you improve and grow, because these are things that or at least I feel I've struggled with.
Just like a lot of self-experience and other people that we've been around experiencing. Yeah.
So just know we're not doing this out of any malice. And the only announcements I have is we have another robot tutorial coming out tomorrow. It was really awesome to see you guys already do some of the thumbnailing exercise that I had out from last week. So it's going to continue on tomorrow. I want to give a shout out to Tameas, even though you can't see it. He did a red fan art for me, and it was sent right there. And that was a really cool surprise. The contest, unfortunately, will not be this week or next week. I'm hoping it'll be before the end of this month. We're just trying to do a little more bug testing to have the contest integrated on the site. So for those of you who have been waiting, it is coming, I promise. And it's going to be a really big one. Okay, and then lastly, I was just accepted to Emerald City. So next year, if you are in the area, I will be there with a bunch of my crew. Key will be there as well. And also for Metacon in Minneapolis and Salt Lake City at the end of September. So those are just a few cons I'll be at. If you want to come say hi, I always appreciate meeting people that come to these streams, so I would love to see you there. Okay, let's switch over here. And as we switch over, I'm going to put on my tough love hat. Okay? Now remember, we're doing this because this will help you. If you really listen to what we're trying to say today, I think it will help you in the long run. Okay, so we're going to be going over the 5 big art mistakes, or at least 5 of the big art mistakes today. And like we said in the beginning, there are many more than just 5, so don't feel like these are the only 5 that you have to tackle as an artist. And being an artist is an ongoing journey, which you'll constantly come across speed bumps or obstacles that you have to get over. You'll never get to a point in your experience or in your art career where it's a smooth sailing. Even the biggest artists that I talk to and I admire and look up to, they have talked to me about how they overcome their hurdles. And I feel like a lot of being a successful artist is being able to overcome those hurdles, being able to adapt to any challenge thrown your way. So I think that's something important to note getting started.
It's like life.
Yeah. it's very, I would say, parallel to the way we live life, and you learn from your mistakes. And the only way to get better at art is honestly to fail at doing art, in my opinion. Or you kind of fail in when you recognize something's not looking right in your piece, and you're like, what's wrong with this? And then you seek out the answers to that. Okay, so to start off, we're going to work our way from 5 to 1. So the first one, I think, might be one of the more obvious ones for younger artists, and it's poor time management. And I feel like this is something even in the house we struggle with from time to time.
Oh,
yeah. And you'll have these weird things thrown at you which you might not expect, like when convention season is heavy, there are so many weird random things that distract you from your time, and it might be for like printing. You don't realize how long printing can take if you do self-printing. Or even if you have to order prints, you should give yourself enough of a window so that they'll arrive in time, because if for some reason they don't arrive in time, or there's a mistake, or if they're incorrect, you might be out of a print run that convention.
Maybe not for conventions, but rather just like deadlines in general. Maybe you think you have more time, so you end up kind of just being a lot more leisurely, or giving yourself a day off, and then you end up basically having to pull an all-nighter before, being able to turn it in. So
yeah. And I think one of the biggest things with younger artists that I always hear is, well, actually even some older artists, is I don't have time. And I know I've mentioned this on the streams before. That's one of my least favorite things for someone to say to me. Because when I hear I don't have enough time, instantly that translates into my head of I don't manage my time well. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, and you might be thinking, well, I have a second job and I go to school. There's a lot of reasons why you might not be drawing, but then what are you doing in the time between that? Because I've known a lot of people that had a very hectic, busy lifestyle, but they were still able to squeeze in drawing. And usually it's because your priorities aren't aligned right. So I'm going to make a new. So I would say usually if you're an artist in school, school should probably be your number one priority.
Yeah.
And then
usually.
And then usually number 2 is like family and friends. Usually. So if you can make arts one of the higher priorities, this is great. But then all of a sudden we get into things like your lifestyle. So going out and partying.
Playing
video games. I feel like video games deserves its own slot.
Yeah.
Because of how time consuming, especially for creative people. I feel like a lot of us have gotten sucked into a video game lifestyle for a while. And we're going to be talking about this with one of the other big artist mistakes, but the people you hang around with definitely have an influence on what you do. And I think video games can be detrimental, even though I do feel like they can be helpful in a way, because you do get to see artist renditions of a fantasy world or things like that. But it's when you're spending hours, and I would say daily, on a video game, that's when it becomes hurtful to your art career.
You need to find a balance. So while maybe you still want to play video games, your art has to come first before. And then you can leave time for video games when you need that time to get some inspiration.
Because if art is, let's say, underneath of all these, number 6, well, then guess what? The person that has, there's some people that put art above friends and family, and even, I would say, school. I would say I did that from time to time.
I did that.
So, let's say there's another artist out there that has art literally at the top of the priority chain here. That person's going to pump out a lot more art and get better at art. They'll become a better artist because it's their number one priority. Oh, that was the other thing, work. So we'll put school and work on the same level here. Well, thank you, Kaniwala, for following. So if you have art all the way at the bottom, then you don't have enough time to better yourself as an artist. And the only way to get better at art is literally to invest time and effort. And I feel like that's something that gets a little lost, especially with younger students. When I was in college, I definitely noticed the ones that were progressing really fast were the ones that were going home from school and they would just draw for the rest of the night. And I feel like it was a blessing in disguise when I went to college because my roommates didn't want to pay for internet, and I guess I was okay with it at the time. So for 2.5 years, I didn't have internet. So literally when I would come home from school, I didn't have anything better to do than to draw. And since I was so passionate at that time, it made sense that that's all I wanted to do. So make art a priority. I don't want to hear that you don't have enough time because everyone has the same amount of time. It's just how we decide to use that time on a daily basis. And it might be something as sacrificing some of your sleep time. So instead of waking up at 10 p.m. or a.m., 10 p.m., 10 a.m., waking up at 8. Well, I thank you, Pip for following. And I think you have to then learn, if you do have a busy schedule, if your lifestyle doesn't allow you to draw for 8 hours a day, I understand that. I've had a lot of friends that can't do that every day. But I do see the ones that are passionate enough, they'll make the time after work. They'll wake up earlier. They do things that most people would not to work on their craft. And I think even with my boss from CG Cookie, Wes, he worked at a studio where he had to take a train every day. And it was about a half hour to an hour train ride. But what he did to start CG Cookie is he woke up an hour and a half before he had to leave for the train every single day. And I think it was for a half year to a year. And he did that every day. So he could work on his website, go to work, and then come home. And he would be with his family because he was married and he has kids now. So you have to put in family time as well. And that's why it's number 2 on priority list. And he made the time for it. Now, I think things get a little more difficult once you start, if you have a significant other and then you might be married and you start to have kids, then your priorities really do have to be more focused, in my opinion, on the family time. So you have to push down art a little bit. But most of us are usually younger when we're getting into art, and we have usually a lot of time to kill, especially if you're in high school and college. You have so much disposable time that I don't think there's any excuse or reason that could convince me that you shouldn't, that you're not, why you're not doing art. So I would say make art a priority.
Put it above the internet, social media.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about social media a little bit on this one, because I don't think it would work for the other ones.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about social media then really quick. I feel like this is something that Key and I have had a very similar experience with, at least with, I would say, Instagram. I would say we differ on some platforms. Like I feel like I have a better Facebook platform, but you have a much better Tumblr platform. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest piece of advice that we can give you is, or at least I would give, is put yourself out there on a bunch of different social platforms. But if you decide to go on that social platform, don't just have it be like the bottom of the barrel of what it receives from your art. I would say give it enough effort where it feels like you're updating it on a regular basis, at least like once a week, I want to say, at least. Especially with staying relevant and current. I think if you only post like once a month, I think you're not harnessing your time enough. Or I feel like you aren't like tapping into posting in progress works or keeping those that follow you kind of updated with what you're doing. You don't want to be one of those artists that like just slip in the shadows and then every now and then like put something out and then like goes back in. I mean, you can be, but I've seen the more successful ones be the ones that post, I would say, almost on a daily basis. And there's some of us, I admittedly don't, well, I feel like I was going to throw out an excuse. I think I could be a daily artist because I did for Drawloween, but I have other priorities in my life where art isn't my daily, I don't need to be doing a daily post. But like, I try to post at least once a week, and I shoot for 2 to 3. So give yourself a goal to work towards. Do you have any for like Instagram or Tumblr of like at least this many per month?
I totally agree. The more active you are on social media, the better it will be. You don't have to post your most quality works. You can post sketches. You can post work in progresses. I feel like most of the people that I really like looking up to and following on like social media currently are the ones that post basically daily. They always show their life, whether it's their art or maybe they're just showing a selfie or something.
I thank you as of Tooniverse for following. And I think we could even talk about how there's a lot of, and I feel like this is more for younger artists that are afraid to post because they don't want to show their work because they don't feel like they're good enough. And I have never felt, well, there was a point where I did feel I was good enough per se, but I think I never had that feeling back when I was younger of this isn't good enough. I think if anything, I was a little too hot-headed, and I felt like, oh, I can draw anything and give any challenge at me. And hindsight, looking back at the drawings I did at 1920, they were pretty rough. Well, I'll just say, but I had that confidence of posting, and I think that's why it allowed me to never have that roadblock of you're not good enough or don't post this, people won't like this. Just put anything out there, because if it's coming from you, even if you're doing like a study or you're learning, your followers will appreciate that. They like to see sometimes the struggles or the in progress along with these nice finished, awesome rendered pieces. So I don't think it makes sense to hold yourself back from social media until you're good enough. Because to me, I don't quite understand what that means.
People really like seeing progress too, so it's okay to like not be the best, you know.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Okay.
Also, that was quite a tangent.
Yeah. Well, and you go.
Okay, I was gonna say that it's more about trying to not let yourself get distracted too much. It's very easy to fall into the Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook scroll of doom where you're just, and then YouTube hole where you're just like, oh, 2 hours, 3 hours later.
YouTube's just like a giant lake, and you're like, oh, I'm going to dive in for an hour. And then you're just
Sometimes
swimming.
you just have to remind yourself that, hey, I need to stop scrolling for a moment and just get back to what I was doing, the stuff that I actually want to do.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you can recognize it, if you can kind of know what absorbs more of your time. Like for me, Facebook was kind of a problem, I would say a few years ago, like 5 years ago. So now I don't go on Facebook anymore, like at all. I get notifications and I'll click on it, and if like someone comments on a picture or posts something on my wall, I'll check it out. But when I go to facebook.com, it links me to my art page, and I usually post art, I tag myself, and I leave. I never go on that main wall because I know I'll get sucked into it. And sometimes there's temptations that you literally have to like pull yourself back from, because you know you get sucked into it pretty easy. And I would say Facebook was my number one. I would say now it's Instagram, but thankfully I'm able to do that anywhere. So I'll usually do it, admittedly, when I'm on the toilet or before I go to bed or when I wake up. Those are my 3 most popular Instagram times. And then after that, I try to be more active, doing other things.
Poor time management's all about just taking control and noticing when you're not managing correctly.
And the internet, as beautiful and wonderful as a tool as it is super distracting. So even when we're drawing in the family room up in the front room, we usually just have the TV on and we're just drawing. So we don't really have that access to a computer like we do when we're sitting here, because it's very easy to get distracted.
We try to avoid being on the computer.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one we're going to go over here. Plateauing. And I feel like this is something that haunts artists, because no one can escape this. No artist, regardless of quality level, can escape this. So you might be wondering, well, what is plateauing? Well, let me show you. Okay. I almost feel like I could do this live.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me do it. Let me do it live, actually. I'll make a new layer.
Step by step.
Okay, so this represents your starting points. You are right here, and you're like, you know what? Let's do art. Why not? So
feeling gutsy today.
Yeah. So you go out there, you start drawing, you pick up some how to draw books, or you look on YouTube, whatever it might be, and you start to get better. You're slowly getting better. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, awesome. I have a lot of these ideas or concepts in my head. Let me just start drawing them out. So instead of actively learning like you were on the upgrow here, you're now producing work. Now, you'll start to produce work, but as you keep producing, it'll slightly go down in quality. Now, hear me out, because you might be thinking, well, what about if you're a good artist and you produce a lot of work, but you don't see a lot of jumps in quality? Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So let me just first mention that when you plateau, it is not a straight line. I think we want to comfort ourselves in thinking that our art skills don't deteriorate over time, but I always think of it like The Sims, where even your friendships in the game, everything goes lower unless if you maintain them, unless if you cater to them. And I think the same is true about your art skill level. So it will get a little worse if you're not actively trying to better your work. So you get to a point where you're like, something's wrong. I'm not producing the same level of quality that I was here. Well, thank you, Jazz Hoffman, for following. So you can see how it's below that line. So now instead, you're like, you know what? Let me fix that. Let me go look at my work. What am I doing wrong? And once again, you have that learning curve. Actually, it might not be that steep. It might be like this. And you're really motivated this time around. Who knows why? And you get to a point you're like, yeah, I really have learned a lot in this past, let's say 3 months, because this is time. So this is your time overtime. Mm-hmm. And you get to that point, and then you start producing work. Now, for a while, it might be more of a flat line, and then all of a sudden, it'll start to dip again. And it'll keep doing that till you recognize, once again, you're like, what the heck? Why am I not at that same level? Why am I not producing the works that I was before? And you'll see this a lot when you produce a really solid piece of work at this point. You're like, man, I have really learned a lot, and I feel like I can showcase that in a piece of work. But then when you're at this point, you're like, always looking back and referring back to that piece. I thank you, Kawaii Popsicle, for following. And you're like, man, if only I could get back to that point. And that's where, once again, you do the same thing. But I feel like over time, the upswing or the growth process isn't as large as it was in the beginning. And it's because when you're an amateur or you're a novice,
There's
it's very...
way more technical skills to learn at the beginning compared to when you're trying to figure things out. It's not just technical anymore. It's more about trying to piece together what things you like in your style and what things you don't like. And it's really complicated then.
Yeah, because you might be a great technical artist, but you could be not so creative. And we're going to talk about that in one of the points, but that's very true. And where I feel like this is a very technical growth, where sometimes as you go later on, this might be like a personal artistic growth, not so much technical. So this kind of represents your growth as an artist overall. And the one thing I want you to be concerned about is making sure that in general, let me do a different color actually. As long as your general growth is on the upswing, you're okay. Mm-hmm. Because there will be times where you're below it and you're above it, but for the most part, your median should be a growth arrow. If it's not, that's when there's more of a real problem. You don't want to be one of those artists where the arrow eventually goes down and then you kind of lose a lot of that artistic drive.
A lot of the whole thing when people plateau is they're not trying to critically analyze what's going on. Mm-hmm. They're just kind of riding off what they already know and not trying to figure out things. They're not trying to fix it. They're just letting it go.
Yeah. I would say that like each of these points would be when you feel, what did I write down here? Dissatisfied. Each of this is a dissatisfied point. This is your growth point. Actually, I can do this in each color here. Is it 2 S's?
No, it's 1.
So this is your dissatisfied. Oh, I feel like I should have done that in red. Yeah, you're dissatisfied.
Boom.
You're so angry, you're red. And then your growth would be, I would say, yellow or orange. Mm-hmm. So this would be your growth. And oftentimes, it's very easy to look at, oh yeah, growth, that's awesome. But usually this is painful. They're called growing pains for a reason. And this will not be the fun part of your artwork. This is usually the most frustrating and
the hardest.
Yeah.
Oh man, Sean said something really striking yesterday about the brain and how it's not made for learning. We have to force ourselves to learn.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah. That's why learning is so hard. Is that brains just want to produce chemicals and dopamine and just like do nothing all day.
Oh, I totally believe that. Because I heard our state of rest or our natural state is being lazy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, so whenever we work hard, we really are actually forcing ourselves. And then I would say blue would be coasting. Mm-hmm. So we're always aiming for the peak, but don't be dissuaded not to do the growth process because as painful as it can be, it's totally worth it in the end. Okay, and I think...
Maybe it is too. I don't know. English. It's fine.
What?
I'm talking about the S's.
Oh. We'll just make it look like, oh, it could be 1 or it could be 2. You decide. But this is something that will be with you the rest of your. This is every artist. No artist is immune to this type of plateauing effect. And I think, I'm not going to obviously name names, but there are some artists that are way up here, but they have been plateauing. Actually, that's too straight. That's too straight.
For a long time.
For a very long time. And you can tell by the work that they produce and they push out, it's kind of not only the same, but it might be technically great, because I feel like no matter what, your technical skills will get better over time.
But there can be a point where your technical skills have peaked.
Uh-huh.
And it's not just about technical skills anymore, usually.
Yeah. And I would say some artists even fall into technical traps. I feel like I've been in that trap before, where you have this great piece and then all of a sudden you start over-rendering because you have such a knowledge of it that you feel you have to push it further. But in fact, you're actually hurting the overall quality of the piece, because you're not thinking about just the fundamentals. Like the composition might be hurting because you're detailing everywhere instead of that one spot that really should have the focus. So this is plateauing. And the other thing that I have with it, is this in this one?
We have to talk about how we can fix plateauing more in detail.
Okay. So I guess do we each want to give like a personal example? So maybe talk about when you noticed this and when you went up.
Usually when I'm dissatisfied, there's something about my work that it's usually the first thing you want to do is tackle your weaknesses, because those are usually what's keeping you from leveling up. It's not about riding on what you're already good at. It's about trying to get better at things that you're really not good at.
Which is funny, as you keep saying riding, I'm like, oh, this is like a bike ride.
Yeah.
Because the hardest parts of the bike ride are going up the mountain. So it's fun to coast. It's a lot of fun to coast.
Fun.
It could be comfort zone lane, and you're just going at 10 miles an hour on your bike, and man, it's a blast. But eventually you hit near the bottom and you're like, oh crap, now I gotta like pedal up this mountain again. And sometimes artists get so lazy, they're like, you know what, instead of taking the hard route,
I'm just
gonna keep coasting. Exactly. And that's where you see artists,
it's falling into your comfort zone too much and just doing the same thing over and over again.
So for Guy Webb, so I'll do a quick explanation of the graph. So essentially this is your plateau graph. When you start off as an artist, you're here, you want to learn, you're like excited about art, you're passionate, and then you get to a point you're like, okay, now let me put all of what I've learned into practice, because I have so many ideas from video games that I played or movies I watch, and then you just coast on it. And then eventually you get to a point where you become dissatisfied with the work.
So you want to learn more.
Yeah, and then you kind of repeat that same cycle. So it's going to constantly do this. Now, I'm going to pull this here. So over time, I thank you, Penetrather, for following. I think that's it. Over time, it's going to look like this. It's like a mountain of sorts. And I was talking to Key about this beforehand. Let me see. Oh, it's this layer. Okay. So when you are a newer artist, I'm going to grab a new layer here. So when you're a new artist, you're going to be on this side of the graph. So everything that you produce, even though you're really excited about it, and sometimes it's even with kids, they don't really know that it's not technically good because they're just so happy to create. Their passion is evident. But everything technically is going to come out kind of rough, admittedly. And even as you start growing as an artist, you'll probably be only able to produce mostly rough works. And it's that whole saying that you have to create 1,000 crappy art, or you have to create 1,000 crappy art pieces before you start producing good ones. Or is it 10,000? It's one of them.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Z Grundy, for following. So then over time, you might get better technically, but guess what? You still can produce rough pieces. Now, there's a very slim chance of that happening, but you can still see it's there.
It still happens, though.
It still happens.
A lot.
So then as you go more on the route, you can see how, okay, you're like a year into it. Some of the pieces you produce are going to be okay, but I would say 60% of them are still kind of rough. And that's natural. I don't think it's weird for an artist just a year in to be like, why am I producing nothing good? It's because, well, you're only a year into it. And the people that you admire, these artists that you look up to, they've been doing it for 20 years. So guess what? You have a little bit of a catch up that you need to be doing. So we'll just say this is like year 1. And then you keep pushing yourself. This was actually a very good year for you. By the time you get to year 2, actually, I would even throw in some good and great ones. So when you go to year 2, all of a sudden, not only are you producing some good work, but every now and then, some pieces are great. They like exceed your expectations. You're impressing your teachers, and that's great. I mean, there's still times where you're producing very rough and slightly okay pieces, but now you've kind of tapped into something that you've never done before, which is your quality is matching your creative passion, and you're actually getting some good and great work out of it.
I wouldn't say these year 1 and 2 is realistic, though. It could be several years.
Yeah. Actually, should we just say like year 3?
Year 5?
Year
10? I don't know. It depends when they start doing art.
And this is definitely going to vary from person to person because these lines here are going to vary from person to person. No one is going to have the same plateau graph. So then let's say this is like year 15.
Boom.
So at this point, all of a sudden, like only 10% of the work you're creating is rough or okay, but everything else is good, great, amazing, and you're not quite there yet, but you can tell on the horizon there are pieces that you're going to create that are going to be excellent. They're going to be like gallery worthy, or they're going to be the concept for a new movie or video game that is really going to be striking. Like, I think one of the examples of a concept being excellent, because I sometimes think we think gallery pieces, but I think concept art can be the same thing. When Jinx was introduced in League of Legends, to me, that was such an excellent concept character that was created. I believe that was Katie DeSaulis that created that one. But anyways, I think she really hit and tapped into this because she put in a lot of effort and time digging deep. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Because when you're at the top of this plateau, you still have to work very hard to get to where you want your pieces to come out in a quality essence. Because someone at this stage can work this hard and produce something good. And if this person kind of works the same level, they'll produce something better, but they have potential to create so much more. And this is where we get frustrated with artists that are so good, or that we have seen pieces that they've done in the past that have been amazing because they have the potential to do it, but they're not digging deep enough. They're only digging to
they start
good
coasting too much.
Yeah.
And just being okay with not trying as hard.
Yeah, I would say like green and blue is a comfort zone, which is good. You want to get to a point where you can produce a green or blue piece at any given time, but do not rely on it. And I feel like you and I have both have fallen into that trap.
Oh yeah, I'm guilty.
Yeah. And that's why it's something that, as we're talking about each of these, this is something that I have personally been guilty of, and I feel maybe you have too.
We're just pep talking ourselves too, really.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of what we're doing is just
trying to decipher what really is happening.
Yeah.
We're just putting it in words.
And we, admittedly, we're no different than you. I feel like the only difference is maybe we've put in more time into it, but you could be not only at our level, but you can be better than us, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
If you put in the time and effort, I believe anyone could be great. And I really do believe that you can become a great artist. I don't really believe in talent. And this is something that I've talked about on stream before too. And I won't dive too much into it. But if you want to get good at something, put in the time and effort. Because especially with the art field, yeah, we might have had an interest in it younger. So I think we were, what's that word? Where it's like you have an interest in something, so you have more of a
passion, drive,
maybe drive,
jumpstart.
Yeah, I would say like over other kids when you're younger, since you're more passionate about it, you'll probably do it more often when you're younger, and you learn a lot more when you're younger. So when 5th grade, usually you had like the good art kid in the class, and I think sometimes, well, I thank you, Ms. Nicole Dark, for following. I think sometimes that can be intimidating because you compare yourselves to who is around you, and that's definitely something we're going to talk about as well. But
it's easier to do when you're a kid because everyone around you is a kid. But now that we have the internet, Oh boy, that got a lot harder.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's answer
we're
some
gonna
questions,
yeah.
before we
All right,
move on to the
John
next.
Miller. Does that mean your creativity cycle would be in between the steps of your quality cycle?
Yes. Usually, yes. So on the upswing, and actually Loesch just posted this great thing where it was like an infinity symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'll just recreate it here.
Boop. Done.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure... Oh, what was it?
I didn't actually see it.
Hold on. Let me just go to it because... You know, I can just pull it up. I don't need to redraw it. I'll just drag and drop it in. Because this is like another way of thinking of plateauing, but more on your time and how hard it is. Oh, here it is. To recover from feeling over... What was it? Oh yeah, your burnout. Okay, so essentially you have this action and recovery cycle. So usually this is when you're experimenting and sketching. And if you compare that to our graph here, that's on the upswing of a plateau.
Yes.
So you're learning, you're growing, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm ready to put it into action. And you draw, this is like you're outputting a lot of good work or a lot of work that you've been wanting to while you were on that upswing. And then you kind of go into a rest mode again because you hit, once again.
You learned a lot.
Yeah, and you hit that point.
Now you want to coast a little bit.
Let me pull up the other one. So you peaked, it's like the peak and dissatisfaction are the same thing here. You're dissatisfied, usually, oops. You're dissatisfied here, and then you peak there. So then oftentimes, I feel like the same thing could be said, but in different graphs. So whatever visuals I think help you. I'm a very visual learner. I was telling Key before, that's why I need graphs, because I think that's how I can teach better, is I visually see what I'm talking about. But hopefully this graph will help you as well, because this made so much sense to me about burnout. When you're doing way too much of the blue, or no, when you burn out, you need more recovery. And then when you have momentum, all of a sudden you are like driven. You have so many good ideas and you are just ready to produce. And you better give yourself enough time to produce because you are so motivated. Good things will come out of that. Okay, so going back to our plateau graph here. So I know I mentioned digging a little deeper, and I did it a few times. Oop, cover up the... So let me give a better visual to help showcase that, because that is actually the number 3 mistake we're going to talk about. You're not digging deep enough. And oftentimes this relates to your creativity, or you are relying on what you already know works, so you're just reproducing more of that. So let me do a graph here. Okay, so you are the artist that is holding the shovel. And I probably should have did this in my graph too, but the shovel is also going to improve because your shovel is your technical ability. So this shovel can dig pretty deep, and pretty much the levels that you dig is how much effort and time you're putting into it. So the more that you dig, guess what? There are little chunks. Oops, let me grab a different layer though. So there are these little chunks of silver and gold if you can dig deep enough and find them. Now, you could put in a lot of time and effort, and guess what? You might miss all of them. So you put in a lot of time and effort, and guess what? Just an over-rendered kind of mess. But sometimes you dig deep enough, and you stumble upon something great, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. And sometimes you might be like, oh, let me push it further, and it didn't really get any better. But that's okay, because it still hit.
Because you still got something out of it.
Yeah.
Which basically is like an accident or a mistake, but it was like this sort of mistake that kind of like blew your brain away and it was like, oh, this is going to change my art forever.
But then sometimes you find that, and then you do the same amount of work, and you're like, wait, why does that not look like what I just did? But then you try again, and guess what? You found it. So there will be times where even though you had found it once, you might not be able to find it again the first time. But keep trying, keep experimenting. Because guess what? Sometimes you find that piece of silver that you found that first time, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to push it even further. And you really dig deep, and guess what? You just found a piece of gold. Now, I know that this is all metaphorically speaking, but I feel like you guys can understand what I'm saying, because that piece of gold just proves that the amount of time and effort you put into digging that deep was really worth it.
And usually to be able to dig this deep, you have to keep pushing beyond what you're already capable of. You have to do a stroke or a line or something that's maybe a little bit different than what you normally would do. And that's usually how you find these magical mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, here, do you want to get another question or two?
Yeah. Do you want to scroll up a little bit?
Yeah.
Couldn't it be that artists stay in their comfort zone out of fear rather than laziness?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a little laziness, but yeah, there's a lot of fear. I feel like we could do an entire stream on fear.
We'll do an entire stream on fear.
Because I feel that is such an important topic to talk about, where usually the artists that really make it are the ones that are willing to be vulnerable, the ones that are able to be brave and show not only who they are, but what they're capable of.
Right.
Because oftentimes we hit a certain level of skill and we're like, okay, this is what I got. I'll just show it to you. And then other times you're like, you know what? I'm going to really push forward and I'm going to try something new and I'm going to push it out. It might be unexpected and not what you're used to seeing from me, but I'm experimenting. I'm trying something new. And sometimes it's bad, honestly, but other times it's great. And the artists that realize that you have to experiment and push yourself beyond to really become a better artist, those are the ones that you'll see really make it. And those are the ones that I look up to. And the ones that I've talked to at conventions, they kind of all said the same thing, and that they really needed to fail to learn how to succeed, essentially. Okay, so you have this little wooden shovel, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to upgrade my technical skills, and over a while, you're like, you build a better shovel. Now you have a silver shovel, and I'm going to paint over all these shovels. You got the silver shovel.
Give it a handle.
You're able to dig deeper.
Yeah, man.
And this is going to require a lot more time, but all of a sudden, guess what just opened up?
Oh.
A whole new set of resources. You can dig up these little gems, digging in the dirt. But you still have to dig deep. Now, I also want to point out, though, what the brown level represents, and it's something that I feel like sometimes we're a little harsh, but I call this surface level drawings. It's where you're barely digging below the surface of what you're capable of, and then you're just pumping out art from here. Why is my brush doing that?
I don't know. Do you have toe controls on?
Oh, maybe. Oh, no. Maybe I was just pushing down on it. Oh. So this is surface level quality. If you're producing just this, I am telling you now, stop.
Yeah.
You are capable of much more than you think you are, but you're just like, oh, well, I'm only digging a little deeper. I'm trying. It's like, not really, because if you were trying harder, you'd be able to find...
Usually surface level quality is just redrawing something you've already done well.
Yes. And I think this is good to note that even a more experienced artist still has that surface level. Yeah. It's not as big, but they can still just dig a little bit and produce something that is technically more sound, because guess what? You got a better shovel. So technically it will be better, but it's still a surface level drawing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing we just talked about. You keep digging. Yeah, there will be more gold and silver that you stumble upon, but now if you really push it, you could find a gem. A real gem of a piece that you just created. He's like, stop. And that will go even further. Let's make this, I want to make this a golden shovel, actually.
Boom, gold.
Because you really pushed your technical ability.
Give it a handle, like near, like another handle. Well, not, well, yeah. All right. Yeah, fancy.
So now you got this fancy golden shovel. Why, thank you, Cat Mars, for following. You have this amazing technical ability, and you are able to dig deep below even like the granite rock. And when you are, what was the whole thing of, to make diamonds, you need a lot of pressure, or what's it's something along those lines. And you are at that point where now you can start producing diamonds because you have been given the ability, the technical ability to get there. So same thing, you dig a little bit, you can still get silver. Dig further, gold. Further, you get a gem.
Man, it's even like further. Art's like a video game.
I totally believe the art lifestyle is exactly like a video game.
It's like The Sims, but harder because you're not Sims is like, oh, they're just upgrading because they just upgrade because it takes time. But it's more than just time. It's a lot of learning and critical thinking, and not, you can't just assume time is what's going to be it for you.
Yeah, and we always talk about how you don't just have to produce a lot of work, but you also have to be critical on your own work, on seeing, okay, where are there areas in my pieces that aren't working? How can I improve upon them? Because otherwise, you're just literally pooping out the same level of quality pieces over an extended period of time and not realizing that you're not getting better.
Yeah.
If anything, you might be having that plateau effect where you're getting a little worse, where, yeah, maybe technically you might get a little better with some things, because when you draw over and over, there are some things that you'll pick up. But if you're blind to what's wrong, that's the bigger issue that you should be more concerned about. Okay, so this is something that I think visually makes sense for me when understanding, not digging deeper, and I really do implore you guys to dig deep on your pieces. And yeah, it's going to be harder the deeper you go. This isn't like the topsoil where it was really easy and light and you barely have to think. When you're doing a piece that's down here, and this is sometimes I think why I'm scared to do...
You have to put so much thought into it.
And effort.
There's just a chance that maybe it won't.
Well, I thank you,
out,
Virolin, for following. And honestly, I think that's sometimes why I'm scared to do like a big swordplay illustration, because I know to get down the level of quality that I want to hit is going to take a lot of not only digging, but a lot of time and effort. And honestly, the only reason that I haven't done it is because I'm being lazy. I don't have a good reason, and I think a lot of us don't have good reasons why we don't produce better work, other than we're either afraid or we're being lazy. And I think that's what that whole stream will be on, probably. Yeah. Afraid and lazy.
Because once you have the golden shovel, you know how much effort it's going to take you to dig deeper. So now that you have that knowledge that it is going to be harder, it can be very, very like intimidating.
Oh, and do you know what's even worse? Is that when people know that you have the golden shovel, they expect you to always be producing gems and diamonds. So they'll be like critical on you when you're only producing silver and gold, and they have some right to.
Yeah.
But I feel with artists, the better you get, there is more pressure on you.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing you can do is just to rise up to the challenge. Okay.
Or just be happy with what you're doing because, you know, that's you.
Yeah. And if art is more of a hobby, like, I understand. You don't have to be as serious, because I think sometimes I treat art too seriously and I get wrapped up in what we call playing the game. And I think there's sometimes where you have to remember in the first place, when you're a kid, why you drew. Because you just love to draw. You're passionate about it. And you should never lose that. And I think sometimes if you become too business oriented, you lose some of what made you love art in the first place. And then after a while, your work will show it. Because I think your art will directly reflect you and your life at that time. And even if you're doing like concept art pieces, you might be thinking, well, how will that reflect me personally? It's usually the quality output that you're putting into it, or how much effort or how much creativity you're putting into it. If you're in like a really good place in your life, usually I feel the output will be better. But then if you're really not having a good time with whatever is going on in your life, I feel like the output will be slightly worse, because your mind's somewhere else. It's not in your work, it's with whatever's bothering you. Okay, Tijal says, that's a beautiful painting of colored sand in the jar you just made. Well, thank you. Wow. Personally, my favorite thing I've ever done. Zofeng says, how long have you been doing art, and how long did it take you before you find your style? Actually, Guava said it best. I did an entire stream on that, but if you want to answer when you felt
Oh, man.
you did.
I've been doing art since I was a kid, so I always knew I wanted to do art. So, I mean, since I was a wee babe. But when it comes to style, I feel like artists are always going to be finding their own style, because style is a reflection of a person, and people are always changing, and usually the plateaus happen when maybe the person stops changing, or basically they maybe don't change their art out of fear and don't evolve their art with their person. So
yeah, And I think Bobby Chu, he just released an excellent video on 6 mistakes that artists make.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them was talking about how your style is like a melting pot.
Yeah.
And you throw in ingredients from other people's styles and what you're influenced by, and you create your own style from all these different ingredients. And he was saying that, well, actually, that's something I'm going to throw in. Oftentimes, younger artists, they're only throwing in like 1 or 2 ingredients, so it's very obvious who their style influences are. But as you get older, you'll be exposed to like more movies, more films, more people, more cultures. And all of a sudden, you're pouring in a bunch of different ingredients, and then your melting pot will be uniquely yours.
And what's so great about today is how much media we have now compared to before the internet, that we're just overloaded with so much content that...
Almost to a fault.
Yeah.
Really?
It's so insane how many influences can affect you. Because some people can point out who their main influences are, but like when you really take the time to think about what your influences are, it could be way more than you could imagine.
Yeah. And like Bobby Chu, he was saying how his influences, some people wouldn't even be able to guess it because they inspired him so much, but he really did find his own route that he created his own unique style. And that's when you know you have a style. If your style is kind of hard, it's kind of like one of those where you're like, their style is kind of like so-and-so and it's kind of like so-and-so. That means you kind of have your own style because you're hard to kind of pin down. Okay. So I think, we'll answer a couple more questions before we move on. Miss Chibi Artist says, I definitely feel that I'm in the growing stage and I'm experimenting a lot. I'm constantly getting new ideas and starting a lot of different paintings. It's hard for me to sit down and render out a painting because I just want to work on something new. How should I balance this?
I feel this all the time. All the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, you answer this. I'll get ready for the next one.
I mean, I whine about this a lot in the house because I always want to work on something different. Because there's so many things I want to work on. So I totally get it. And Tim's advice to me was, you just got to sit down and work on one thing at a time. You got to prioritize one and just decide, all right, today I'm going to work on this and I'll save the other stuff for later or something. But it's really great to have a lot of ideas over having no ideas at all. So I feel like you should just be happy that you really do want to create all this stuff. But you're not going to be able to create all of this stuff at once. You have to prioritize them and just try to pick them off one at a time.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's okay for your list to change. I would say at least get one done. And then the second on the list, maybe you want to do that one next, but maybe something else changes. So maybe you work on the one that you feel more inspired to do after at least finishing one thing, and then just kind of repeat that. So. Yeah.
And, well, I guess, no, you said it well. So John Miller says, how do you get over the fear of tarnishing your silver looking for the gold? Oh, that's a great question.
Oh, yeah.
I struggle with this a lot because if I feel like I found a piece of silver or gold, I want to keep it like that because I have a problem of over rendering things because I feel like technically I can push it further, but oftentimes I over render a piece and then it loses some of what made it so great or cool. So my advice would be I want to say keep it as it is and move on to a new one. But I feel like you have to really feel it out. If you think the piece could be pushed further.
It's a lot of feeling.
Absolutely.
It's because there could be a moment in your piece where you're super happy with it, but you know you can go farther with it. But sometimes going farther can maybe make the piece worse than it was. And that's just going to take you time to have to just learn how far you should and shouldn't take a piece.
Yeah, so I feel like you have to treat it from piece to piece. If you think there is a lot more that you could push it without ruining it, then I would go further. But if you're like, man, this is really solid as it is and I don't know what I could do to make it better, then move on to the next. Because you'll be able to find more gold and silver. And eventually you'll be able to dig deeper than that, yeah.
And honestly, sometimes it's okay to ruin the silver for the gold because maybe you will find a better route than maybe what you already have on accident because you sacrifice maybe a certain way that you do something to
Well, I thank you,
try
Joel Olds
something
95 for
new.
following.
And that's just like a really big learning curve.
Yeah. Okay, so Tijel says, dig a little deeper. Honestly, when I was drawing those and I was talking about digging deeper, I was thinking of the same song. Princess and the Frog is actually my favorite Disney princess movie. I would definitely check it out if you guys haven't seen it yet. It's all about working to get what you want in life. I love that. Tijel says, I love your makeup today. What are you saying? Mine's not that good? Oh, what are you saying? John Miller says, so saying that this is a digging timeline here, how long does it take you to dig to the gems?
Oh. That ranges from person to person.
Yeah, it ranges from person to person. There are some artists where they can dig really fast. Like, that's their skill is they can dig really fast, and they can get to a gem.
Some people are slow diggers.
Yeah, like, sometimes I would admit I'm a slow digger.
It's gonna completely be different between person to person, so it's just gonna take you time to figure out maybe, like, how long it'll take you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Gypsy, for posting the Bobby Chew video. Man, you guys are on top of it. I am so impressed. Spyro says, one of the things Bobby also said is that when someone asks you your inspirations are and they can't see those people in your own artwork, that's when it's truly your own. Mm-hmm. Yes. I think now it's very obvious that I have an inspiration from Alan Williams, but back in the day, my inspirations were very much like a Squaresoft influence. I would say Kingdom Hearts and like Final Fantasy X. I loved those, and Tetsuya Nomura was the concept artist behind a lot of those, and I was enamored. And I would say even with like Twisted Metal Black, there are a lot of influences that I think people wouldn't guess from my work, but I love things that are a little more creepy, a little more scary, have texture to them. Oh yeah, and that's going to be talking into our next point. So that was a perfect segue. Okay, so then our next point is our next mistake.
Dun, 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 dun.
Your surrounding influences. And I guess we'll first talk about not just in your personal life, but your influences that have inspired you throughout your life.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a lot of like Final Fantasy and video games. I would say were a big point. Maybe some Disney films. So a lot of the work that I was producing looked very similar to that. Or Digimon. I had a very big Digimon phase. A lot of the work that I was doing, I created Ziggymon, and I like created my own Ziggy people, and like that was directly influenced when I was a kid by what I saw, and I was just kind of reproducing my own take. And then as you get older, all of a sudden your taste starts to mature a bit. You're being introduced to a lot more things. You're meeting new people. And especially in college, I felt like I lived in this bubble life, and everything was the same for everyone. We all had like the same family. We all had a similar house. And all of a sudden I go to college, bubble burst, and I feel like I was introduced to so many different people, so many different races and cultures, that my art was, looking back, it was so limited at that time. And when I was introduced to all these new things, I thank you, Wiz Art Brains, for following. All of a sudden, my art started skyrocketing. But
Whoa.
woo!
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for following. That all of a sudden, I felt like I was skyrocketing because I was not only being influenced by what inspired me, but I was influenced by what inspired my friends. And my friends were so uniquely different from me that we were just influencing each other left and right. And it was like this giant pool of weird kids that grew up liking art, but different kinds of art.
Yeah.
Put them all together, there's no way that you're going to inspire each other in some form or another. And one of my best friends in college, her name was Nubia, and she was from Nicaragua, and her stories were so contrasted to at least my life growing up. And we really connected to each other because she had the hardest work ethic because of the way she was raised. And I latched onto her, and she latched onto me because we were just competitive. So I think having people that push you and drive you, those are the people that you want in your life. And for me, this was like my college atmosphere. And if green represents hardworking, good people, we're going to say the ones you want to be around.
Yeah.
And then there are some people that they're not maybe as hardworking, but they got good intentions and they still produce work from time to time. We're going to put them as like a smile. And I'm going to keep going down. So while I'm doing this, if you want to talk about your surrounding influences and where do you think you kind of like really went for it?
Oh, man. I really wanted to talk about how friends can influence you.
Oh.
And
okay.
if they're good friends or not. But basically, I feel that the type of friends you have are very, very important. You want friends that are going to tell you if you're messing up or doing something wrong. You don't want friends that are constantly telling you you're doing a good job, because hearing good job isn't going to help you grow. It's going to make you want to just coast or not improve. While where a good friend would critique you, they would like be honest with you and tell you maybe what's wrong, or you know, like, and maybe try to help you out and try to figure out why maybe this is a problem. I mean, this could go for real life friends, or it could be for art in general, but just, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I think the way that we can visually represent that is, let's say this is you.
Mm-hmm.
All the people that are in your life, and I feel like I have that right now in the Von House. I feel like I'm surrounded by a bunch of artists that are passionate and they really are dedicated to their craft. So I feel like that influences me to be green.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, though, let's go back a ways to like high school or even to college.
Yeah.
There are some bad eggs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? There are definitely people that are going to hold you down. Actually, I would say even a little after college, I had some people in my life that I felt like were holding me back. Well, I thank you, Jason246695, for following. And Smack_City.
Hey.
So let's say this is your friend group. You have a lot of people that, let's say, play video games all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't. I don't want to paint it in such a negative light, but I feel like we've all had such a bad experience with a few, or maybe even just one. No, I would say usually a few people that excessively played video games, and that affected you because then you wanted to be included and you wanted to play with them.
It really stinks when you have friends that you can only bond doing one thing.
Exactly. So now let's say these are your friends. By the process of, I was trying to think of the word, I'm going to say by association, but I feel like it's assimilation or something where I'm going to mix these colors together, and guess what? Your green just became a little more orange. And now all of a sudden, you've become someone that is more on the middle tier. You're not producing as much work. You're playing more video games.
Mm-hmm.
And usually what will happen is this green outlier right here. Oops, let me make my brush. Oh.
What?
my brush like just went in on itself. So this green outlier here, he's going to be like, man, I'm around a lot of people that aren't really feeling the way I'm feeling or not as passionate anymore. He's just going to disappear because he's going to look for other green people that are just as passionate as he is. So all of a sudden, let's take him out. Guess what? The thing that was keeping you more orange just left. So now, by association, you become more of this unhappy pink color. And that's because the people you're around with are influencing you, and you're a byproduct of the people you're around. So now, you get to a point where you're like, all these people that are around me are bad influences. And we've all been, well, I shouldn't say we've all been there. I will say most of us have a point in our life where you're around people where you can recognize they're lazy. They are not good for you. They are influencing you in a bad way. And speaking on personal experience, what did I write down?
I can't read your writing.
Cut them out of your life. It is so much easier than it sounds. Or no, it's easier.
It's easier. It sounds easier.
It sounds easier than it is. And it might be kind of hard to take yourself out of the situation because then you get personal feelings involved and you get emotions. But just like that green outlier did, you need to pull yourself out of this toxic, which is horrible, this horrible environment. And as soon as you leave, all of a sudden, like immediately, I would say your mood will increase.
Yeah.
Because you're ready to learn and grow again, and you'll find other people because I do believe in like the universe and like putting out energies and receiving it.
Yeah.
So if you put out this energy of like, I want to meet people that are passionate about working and that are serious about art, you will find them. And let's say this group of people, this is all in one layer. Oh, I did it on one layer.
Everyone's being destroyed.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so then let's say you wander up to this new group of people, and they're, for the most part, they're all, actually, you know what? No, they're all green. You have found the best group of people.
Ever.
Ever. And you walk into them and you're like, hey guys, I really want to learn. Can you guys help me? And they're like, yeah. And over time, all of a sudden, your mood starts increasing. And, maybe one of them goes down a little bit. But overall, you're increasing. More time passes by. Now you're increasing. That guy got a little worse, but all of a sudden, this guy got picked back up.
No one's going to be green all the time.
That's the point I was going to make. Yeah, no one's always going to be green. There's going to be times where you're going to fade back a little bit, not be as passionate or not work as hard. And that's normal. But if you have other greens around you, they'll pick you back up because they'll motivate you. They'll tell you you're slacking. And just like we're doing for most of the stream day, it's tough love. But remember that there's love in that statement. They're not going to just do it just to belittle you or to make you feel crappy. If that's the case, they're not your real friends.
Yeah.
And this is the type of pool that you want to be surrounded by at all times.
We have a question.
Okay, question.
What if I'm in high school and none of my friends or classmates are interested in art? And I have very few art friends online, and I need people who help me and give me feedback.
Oh yeah, I felt the same way in high school.
I didn't have any art friends in high school, and I didn't really have friends in college either. Everyone was more cliquey, or like I had my own drive, and I didn't really feel like my drive was matching up with anyone. So I mean, sometimes you have to kind of rely on different sources. The internet, there's people on the internet where you can talk to people, and maybe like you don't always have to depend on other people to have a drive or to want to do something. You can find it in yourself to really push yourself.
I would say that's first priority.
Yeah.
Be your own best motivator.
Be your own flame. Don't steal from other people's flames.
Yeah. Because I feel like if we are looking for other people to help us all the time, then we're never growing on our own. And I feel like true growth is from yourself or from doing it in solitude. And yeah, feedback will help motivate you, but you got to be the one to put in the effort to learn something new or to draw and to push yourself. The other thing was, I mean, that's why we're doing things with like even these CG cookie streams. Hopefully you guys, I actually know some of you guys have found friends outside of this Twitch chat. And when I went to London last year, I met a few of you that wanted to even rent a house and like enjoy each other's company. So like being exposed to even something like this might be your way to find friends. There is no one way to find friends. I met Key at a convention. If I wasn't setting up there and if she wasn't just wandering by my booth, we might not be friends in this situation.
It's weird moments.
Yeah, they're unpredictable. Well, thank you, Doom_in_.
And I want to tell people that surrounding influences isn't just friends. It could be just the people that you look up to on the internet. You want to be able to not settle for just a select few of influences. You want to be able to have a huge variety of influences. You want to keep looking for new ones, and just, it's all about learning. It's the same thing about influences that we have with like plateauing and whatnot.
Absolutely. So as long as you're throwing yourself in situations where you can meet new people, that's how you're going to meet new people. It might not always happen. It might not be as, it might be more rare.
It could just be simple. Like you guys are in our stream right now. That could just be one place to get your influences is just jumping into someone's Twitch or following a new person that you think seems really cool, or really simple stuff. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Honestly. And actually, I mean, I guess the last thing is not only have I met Key at a convention, but also Ashley I met through doing Doodle Art Battle. Gabe I met because he was a comic book artist that went to my college, and we knew of each other, but it was after college when I would see him at parties, and that's how we got to know each other.
Go to parties.
Same at Tyler, same way. He went to my school. Well, yeah, you don't have to go to parties. I'm not like, yeah, party. Tyler was the same way, and then Sean was another one I met at a convention. And if he didn't go to that convention, or if I didn't set up at that convention, we would have never met. We wouldn't be friends.
Basically, I feel
it's unpredictable.
like I know it's hard to leave the house. So, of course, there's the internet. But sometimes it's nice to just try to enter an environment where you know there are other artists. Like conventions is a really good one. The Artist Alley. I'll go to a convention and just hang out in the Artist Alley the entire weekend.
And I couldn't think of a more like safe space than a like anime convention. There's no one that's gonna be like judging you for. Well, I think you ran 196 for following. for what you're wearing, because everyone's wearing weird things. And like at least I felt this way in high school. I was like, well, only the weird people go to those conventions. And then I went to college, and I was like,
It's
man, I was so
literally
wrong. I was so wrong. They're like the nicest people.
most accepting environments. Well, unless there's drama, but I mean, there's drama everywhere.
Yeah,
You just-
I mean, that's unavoidable. We're humans.
we're humans.
Okay, so I think we'll now segue into our very last one, unless if I have... Nope, we talked about fear, influential
Yeah.
pull.
Mhm.
Oh, so I guess with the surrounding influences, I just want to say that crowd of people that you're with, it doesn't just have to be like they're playing video games. They could be really great people.
Yeah.
I feel like I had some friends from high school. We're still friends today, but I don't talk to them on a daily basis because they're doing their thing and they respect that I'm doing my thing and I'm really passionate about art. So the fact that I have really close art friends, they not only understand, but then
Yeah.
when I see them, which might be like once every 4 months or maybe once a year, I thank you, Mojito James, for following. When I see them that once a year, it's like yesterday. It's like we fall
Yeah.
right back into that same
I
friendship
feel like
role. No
friends
problem.
are the good friends are the ones that are more understanding of what's going on in your life.
Exactly.
And if they give you a hard time, then maybe they're not really the right friend
Yeah.
for you.
Or the ones that are constantly like needing things from you or wanting you to like cater to them. And I've had a few of those friends, and I feel like it took me a while to realize what was happening. And I was like, nope, hard cut off. I don't want you in my life anymore. And yeah, some drama arose, but it's something that you have to do for yourself from time to time if you can recognize that this isn't working.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move into the last topic today. Oops. We're just gonna, yeah. No. All right, we're gonna use our eraser. So last thing is talking more than doing. This is probably the most frustrating thing for me to hear from an artist because, well, I thank you, Kosau12, for following. Because I can't stand excuses. If I had like one of those meet the artist and it had like the likes and dislikes, excuses would be my number one. I can't stand them.
And be the only one.
Yeah. Excuses and the pop figures. I can't stand those
Oh,
things.
yeah.
So if you're doing this or if you think you might be under this category, stop it right now. I am telling you, no one wants to hear it. And I know that sounds really harsh because it is. It's really blunt. No one wants to hear it. And part of the reason I'm going to talk about this, actually. Ashley, do you want to give your quick segue? This is perfect. I'm literally just talking about talking more than doing.
Here comes
Okay,
Ashley.
so I'm going to introduce, this is my roommate, Ashley Cloverkin on Twitch and Instagram. And she had a great explanation for why people talk about what they're going to do and then the reasons why they do it.
Where am I? Yeah.
Here, I'll move it right. You might have to, I'll scoot in. There we go. Okay, because she had a really good explanation, so.
In short, people will tell you what they're gonna do so that they can get the praise up front instead of actually doing it and then getting the praise later. So when they say, oh, I've got this big graphic novel, it's gonna have like 50 characters, really long, and like you're like, oh yeah, okay, cool, and you know, you tell them that, oh, it's gonna be like, it sounds like it's gonna be neat, I don't know, and then they just don't do it because they already got the praise. So what you want to do is you want to actually do it first and then have a mic drop moment, I call it, where you just throw it down basically on the table and you're like, there it is.
Yeah.
And so you do it more than you talk about it, you know, and all that time. Yeah, I called it a mic drop moment because of that. There was something else to it too.
It was like, well, you talk about like that instant gratification.
Yeah, that's what it was. Because you want to walk more than you talk, you know, so don't just build it up and keep saying, like, I knew people for years that, like, a decade, they would just talk about this one graphic novel and all these characters. It's like, what have you done? No, just a couple sketches. It's like, no. No, you got to start, you know, focusing on that one thing, too, and actually doing it instead of just, you know, living in that one world. It's like when somebody has one project, it's not like enough.
You should have multiple.
You should, but you should want to get one done at a time so you can do all of them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you got to do the focus one at a time, and you know.
It like kind of goes back to we were talking about poor time management, and we feel like either novice artists or artists that don't recognize how to create a lot of work, they fall under the trap of not spending their time wisely.
Draw every day. You don't have to post every day, but I would encourage doing that too. But drawing every day will at least get you in the habit of failing. Yeah. The habit of failing is very important.
Yeah.
You have to learn to fail. You have to embrace failure, or else you're never going to be able to make that giant graphic novel. And you can't expect, you know, writing to be good either unless you practice that as well. So you really have to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are, or else that's just not going to happen. You know, and you don't want to end up being 40 trying to tell people, hey, I'm still working on this graphic novel. I started when I was 20. I'd say if something is like 5 to 10 years old right now, ditch it and get a new one.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's going to kill you. It's going to kill your heart.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've outgrown your characters most likely by then, too.
Yeah. And like the way you see the characters and what you want them to be will change.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ash.
Sorry I got caught off guard.
Oh, man.
No. So to show that more visually, it's like we see people praise others and we want that same for ourselves. So then we produce something, we're like, hey, look at this. I don't know why this is like my great piece of work. Look at how great this is. And they're like, oh, here's some praise for you. And they like hand it over and it's like an exchange. You give them a piece of art and you receive praise in return. So then after a while, you're like, oh, what if I did something smaller? And you're like, oh, I still got the same level of praise. And then after a while, you're like, man, I don't even need to show anything. I can just talk about what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and you still receive the same amount of praise.
Yeah.
And this is a trap that artists get caught in. I obviously get caught in. And I think even with my novel Swordplay, it's very easy to talk about it. Yeah. And that's why I try not to as much. And I just do more. I just create more stuff for it. Because otherwise, you're receiving praise that isn't warranted. Or it's too early. And then you lose the motivation to actually do it. Because if you already received, let's say you have like this, you're like, I want to do this big sculpture. I have all the tools, blah, blah, blah. And then you receive all this praise of like, oh, I can't wait to see it, blah, blah. You're going to do fantastic. You're an amazing artist. I'm sure you'll do blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, you're like, well, I don't really want to do it anymore because I got the feedback that I normally get afterwards.
That's always like the hard thing too, is why I barely post work in progress, is because you want to get the praise after you finish it. Otherwise, maybe you won't have as much motivation to do it, or just...
Yeah, and it's tough. That instant gratification feels so good.
Also, even though it's instant, it also gives you more pressure to have to do it, which can be even more intimidating than if you just did it.
Yeah, honestly. So, not only that do I want to talk about, but then I'm also going to be talking about how art will speak for itself. So this will do more with if you're going for a job interview, let's say. If you're going to bring your portfolio, and Sean was talking to me about this beforehand, saying he can't stand it when someone apologizes immediately for their work. And it's something that we have a rule in this house where you can't be you have to say it. Self-deprecating, because it doesn't help anyone. No one wants to hear it.
No.
And honestly, it's like you're fishing for compliments. It's one of my biggest things of like, am I a fish right now? Are we at Compliment Lake? Am I biting the hook that you're trying to hit me with? Because I'm not biting. And a lot of the times we're doing it because we want others to pick ourselves up and make ourselves feel good about our work. And that way, if they say anything bad, they'll feel bad because we already said we feel bad about it. Yeah. So now if you say it, I'll feel even worse. So it's like a trap for whoever you're telling it to be like, oh, it's not that good, or I'm just not, well, it's like, stop.
It's okay to be vulnerable, but not so much that people can't help you by critiquing you. Because if you always act like everything's going to be terrible, then it's gonna be really hard for people.
Yeah, and you kind of put this weird mask on where everyone sees you as that person, as the person that doesn't believe in themselves, or the person that doesn't do good art. And
then they have to put a mask on to make sure they don't say anything that
that's a great example. Yeah, because then they're putting on this weird fake mask. It's like it's sugar coated. It's like
all
lollipop mask.
sugarcoat.
And it's like, oh no, it's great.
Oh
and like,
no, you're
oh, hi.
perfect.
Linda Evangelista. They're giving you things that aren't going to help you.
Yeah.
So you want the people in your life that are going to be more blunt. I would say me and Kia are very critical of each other. But most of the times it's out of tough love.
Yeah.
And you need people in your life that are going to give it to you straight, that aren't going to just sugarcoat your work because it'll make you feel good in the short term. You want someone that'll be there for the long term, that are going to invest in you as an artist. Okay, and then, oh, there was something else I wanted to talk about for that. Oh yeah, so the portfolio thing. So you go into the portfolio review or into the arts interview, and you pull out your portfolio. So first thing, don't
Don't say
talk
sorry.
bad about yourself and don't say sorry. Art will speak for itself. If you have a strong portfolio, you'll
don't have
get
to say
hired.
anything.
You don't even have to say anything. Now, there is something about having a good personality and being easy to work with. There is a lot of like who you know in the industry that will get you a job. That's very true. But if someone is looking specifically just for like an art that they need for their new movie or whatever they're working on, or a book cover, whatever it is, they want your art because they've seen your quality on previous posts and they like it and they want to hire you for your art. They could almost care less who you are as a person. I know that sounds kind of bad, but they really don't care for the most part, especially
They
big
just want
businesses.
your work.
Yeah.
It's all business for them,
They want what you're able to output.
usually.
And you want what they're able to offer. Usually it's like a job, a paycheck, something of security. And so there is an equal exchange there. And oftentimes you couldn't care about the company. Now, there are times where like you do care about the company cares about you. And like those are the best type of relationships. If you can find a job like that, like really stick to it or do the best that you can, because those are often more rare, I would say, to come across, where I feel a lot of the jobs that I've known from people in the industry, they're not as caring or as, what's a good word? It's like they don't care so much on a base to base.
It's not on a personal level at all. It's all business, shallow.
I totally agree. So with your portfolio, if you have strong work, it'll speak for itself. And then I don't even have a website, and I know I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a website. It is bad practice. I should have a website. But when I go to places or if I apply to like Emerald City, I literally just send my DeviantArt or my Instagram link, because my art will speak for itself. I don't need this long list of what I've worked for or what projects I've done. Because like, here's my work. Do you like it or not? If you do, awesome. If not, I need to get better then. I need to improve the quality of my work. And there's still conventions that deny me. Do I think it's because I didn't have a website? No, I think it's because my art wasn't what they were looking for. And if it was because I sent them an Instagram link, that's on me. And I should have a website. Yeah. But I would say 9 times out of 10, your art will speak for itself. Eli G says, I feel the need to tell people my plans beforehand so that I have people to motivate me and make sure I am doing it. Then I feel like I don't want to let them down. I do think there are times where that does work.
Yes.
I feel like in this house, we've created this weird bubble.
It really depends.
Yeah.
Because there are people that everyone knows that'll just talk about what they're going to do and then never do it. Then there's people that will say they'll do something and then they will do it. So try to be the people that do it and not just talk about it. Because I'll do the same thing where I'll show something that I want to do to my friends. But usually it's not to just get praise, because I mean everyone wants praise, but to also maybe get a critique, maybe like get an opinion on it before you continue.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you're around this person that's always talking about what they're doing, but you never see anything that comes out of them.
They never do anything.
So you're like, are they capable of producing what they're talking about? Or are they just talking the talk to kind of build themselves up to be bigger than they actually are? And I think...
I feel like the more you talk the talk, though, the more and more and more pressure you're just giving yourself.
Yeah. Then you have like this overwhelming... These are all the things I've talked about doing.
All
in the
your
past.
bubbles are going to crush you eventually.
Yeah, right. Then all of a sudden...
You're not there anymore. You're just bubbles.
You're like, help.
I'm
trapped.
in my bubbles.
Oh, you're like scraping out. You're like, no. And then you die.
Oh. God.
This person's still confused by what's happening.
What's going on?
But I think it's good to at least maybe mention something that you're interested in trying. Like I've told Key, usually I'll just say like what my new idea is, but I'll just then do it that night. Or even with me and her are running Drawtober this October, and we've told each other that we're going to do it.
Yeah.
But we don't need to like go into detail. This is what I'm going to do for this
Right.
day. Like, what is your input or how are you feeling? Because a lot of the times you need to rely on yourself. And it's what we
Yeah.
talked about in the
Sometimes it's
first
just
point.
trying to build your own confidence and
Exactly.
being okay with what you're doing.
Yeah, because once you do that, I feel like you can handle creating pieces and doing it on your own without the need of outside influence or feedback. Now, I do think outside feedback is good, but
Yes.
to a point. And I feel like there's some
Because
artists that...
if you let in too much feedback and let people kind of run what you're
Exactly.
doing,
That's what I
then
was
it's just fan service, and then it's not personal level anymore, and it probably won't even be something you want to do anymore because
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
doing it for
really
other
yours.
people. You're not doing it for yourself anymore. That's when your art becomes impersonal.
Yes.
And you can tell that something's different. Like if you do a lot of like personal pieces and then all of a sudden there's one that's like catering to other people. It's like pandering sometimes.
It's playing the game.
That's playing the game.
Yes.
And I guess...
Have you
what-
described what playing
Well,
the game
yeah,
is?
why don't we talk about that really quick? So I guess we coined the
fall
term
into it,
playing
yeah.
the game, and that's essentially with social media typically. You recognize what does better than other posts,
Yes.
or you see what is trending with other artists, and you adapt that and you start producing more of the same of what works. Or that not only just what works, I'll write it over here.
But what people like. So very general things, like what's a animal that people really like. Maybe I'll draw it and then see what the reaction is. So basically, you're just drawing for reaction rather than drawing something for yourself.
I feel like there is another tier to this. We'll probably think of it as we're talking it.
Yeah.
But what works is like, I guess from personal experience, for me, it would be drawing like a character in profile with like some horns or something where I'm not really pushing myself artistically.
Yes.
I'm just kind of outputting my technical level. And it's something that I
Or
know
just
has worked
drawing
before.
something comfort zone. It's like
Yeah.
coasting.
I'll put
It's very
comfort
much
zone
like
in here.
coasting. Surface level drawing.
Now you could do something for yourself that is in your comfort zone.
Yes.
That's understandable. You still want to enjoy the work
It's
that you're
still
doing.
personal to you, at least.
Yeah, so there's this huge balance. Actually, you know what we could do? We could do like have one on one side and the others on the other.
Oh. Well, that's your job.
Yeah, right. Because it's all about finding the balance.
Yes.
So what would we put on this side? This would be like,
Smut.
I would say hard
like
and
smut.
easy.
Okay.
And then there would be could we do it with just one graph? This might be two graphs.
I feel like it would be like a corner graph.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I
Oh,
like that.
I see,
Yeah, yeah,
I
that
see, I
works.
see. Yeah, so this would be comfort. And this would be unknown.
Experiment.
Oh, yeah.
New
like
things.
that.
Experiment. New things. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
experiment.
We'll say experiment.
This is a very black and white sort of way to look at it, but
Yeah.
I mean, just gotta explain it somehow.
Well, I thank you, B. Walker,
Walker.
I for following.
Walker 2.
So then your art range can fall, or pieces can fall anywhere under here. That's why I was trying to say, like, you could still do something in your comfort zone. Like, I could still draw a character, but let's say I did
Yes.
like a 9-foot drawing and it was something
Yes.
out of my comfort
Then
zone with that. So it's hard. It could be more on like, or actually it won't be. I'll say it's like there.
Yeah, it's more comfort, but just bigger.
Yeah, so it's difficult. And this, I would say this is more of a technical skill. Oh my gosh, I think I got it. This is technical, and then this is artistic. No, because you could still have a really...
Yeah, this is, again, black and white.
Yeah, there's more black and white. So I feel like a lot of us will then go in this block.
Yeah, comfort and easy. It's something you can do fast, and it's something that you can just fall back into without really having to think too hard. And that's usually typically what would fall under playing the game.
Yes. This green block would
Something
be playing the
people
game.
have seen you do well before, and you kind of just do that again. And then people like it.
I feel like we should strive to do more experimenting
Yes.
and have it be difficult. So something more in this orange block. Now, that's not to say that every time you do an art piece, it should be in this block.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be there all
No.
the time.
Because I think sometimes it might say easy, but I would
Mm-hmm.
also maybe put it's fun.
Yes, it's fun.
I feel like there are times where, like, if we have a friend come over and you want to collab with them, oftentimes it's going to be more on the easy, fun side.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll probably be, it might be a little experimental. It might be, like, right there, because you might try a new style with them or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's some experimenting, but you're still not really, like, pushing yourself as an artist. And I would say, well, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say that playing the game is easy subject matter that is easy to digest. So it can be in the green, but if you are going to do something that is at least easy, I would at least try to experiment. So even though you're doing something simple and easy, you're trying to still learn from it. So it's not 100% plateau. It's still a little tickle up. It's
Yeah.
not just because you're doing it.
Yeah. And I feel like you should aim, if anything, for the center.
Yeah.
Because then it has all four, where it's kind of a comfort zone, but you're still experimenting. It's kind of hard, but it's still easy and fun. Mm-hmm. So this middle point, if we're going to represent it visually, would be what you should aim for. Because playing the game, I feel like, isn't as bad as sometimes we make it out to seem. Because there are times where, as an artist, if you want to sustain yourself and create a life where your art can pay for your bills, I feel like there is some of the game that you have to play. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you have to see what's popular, what's trending. And it could be something fun. It's like Mermaid, when that was a big thing, or even in October, there's Inktober and now Drawtober. Do those challenges because there's exposure waiting there. And that doesn't mean that you're selling out. It means that there is something that is intriguing to you and that you think you could have fun with. Even with fan art, I feel like it's a thing where if you enjoy making fan art, make fan art.
Yes.
And there's things that you can learn from doing it.
It's still like a personal level to make fan art if you're a fan.
You should be a fan of what you're drawing. If you aren't a fan, then you really are playing the game. That's kind of like the dark side of playing the game.
That's the dark side of playing the game. When you're drawing stuff you're not a fan of, but you're doing
you just want to
it
get popular.
To get popular or to make money.
Or to make money. And selling fan art is still like a very bad gray zone. So you want to be careful with it. But I do think you can learn from it. But it's kind of like what Key was saying. There's times where you're playing the game to get exposure, but there's other times where you're just trying to be popular. Mm-hmm. And if you get too much in the realm of just trying to be popular, you lose yourself in that whole mess. And you forget why you did art.
You kind of sell yourself out.
That's where that comes from. Yeah, you're selling out, essentially, because you're just trying to get popular. You don't care what you have to sacrifice, any personal integrity or any personal influences. It's whatever's popular at that time. I'm going to do my rendition. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but I will say in this graph here, let me erase. There are some very, very, very good artists that I would say are like on here, but I feel like a lot of the art that they're producing is in that zone, and they're only producing that level of work because, one, they don't have to try that hard, and two, this will still get them a good reception. They'll get positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And it could just be okay or even good. Maybe every now and then it might be kind of great, but when you're this good, it is a crime not to still produce pieces that are great and amazing, because you essentially don't care about the quality of the work. You rather would care about how popular you are, how many likes you get, or how many followers you have on Instagram.
It's really easy to lose yourself in that. So I think a really good thing is trying to realize maybe what type of situation you're in and trying to like pull yourself out of it before you dig so far away from what you actually want.
Yeah, honestly.
Digging.
Lots of digging. I kind of want to make a shovel enamel pin now.
Coming up,
Yeah.
shovel enamel pins.
Next
Be
week
ready.
on the stream. Let me see if there's any last thing that I want to talk about.
You could answer some questions.
Yeah, why don't we answer some questions? Let's scroll up first.
Let's see.
Nope, we did that one.
Yeah, we did that one.
So if you have any last minute questions, I feel like we're at the Q&A section because we have talked about all 5, and I know it was a lot today, and today was more of a lecture from us, but I hope that this was helpful for you guys. What?
Digital says, did you just draw me as the person that can't stop talking? That's my haircut. So rude.
I promise that wasn't. Maybe subconsciously. No, it wasn't. I promise. Luabella says, I am completely guilty of that, and I really want to stop. I feel so bad about it. That's okay.
Yeah.
I always say, even to the roommates, if you can recognize that there's something wrong, or if you recognize that you can be better, that's great.
Recognizing is a really big keyword here.
Yes, because there are artists that I think their biggest problem is they can't recognize that there are problems in their work or that there's a problem with what they're producing. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of artist that is harder to recover from, where if you can recognize it, great. Now just take the steps to fix it. Mm-hmm. Why, thank you, Venom Miss _J, for following. Okay.
Wait, there was a question there, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
What can I do if I want to do a project, but I feel my art level isn't that point yet? Should I still try it and go for it if I know it won't end up as I want, or should I focus on growing a little more first?
Yeah, so this is actually something, I think Gabe actually told me this, is that do your project at whatever level you're at now, because in a year or two, when you think you'll be quote-unquote better, you'll have a new project that you'll want to do.
You'll probably just have a new project that you'll kill at because you took the time to do that other project and learn from it.
And because of the experience you learned from that, you're now able to apply it.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where, I would say get it out. I think that's one of my biggest struggles was carrying on this project that I've had since I was younger. And I feel like that has hurt me in a lot of ways. Where I'm excited to do new projects, but I feel like I have to get this one out first. Yeah. And in some ways, I think that has hurt me. So yeah, if you have a project in mind, go for it. Thank you, Shrugman. Shrew. Okay, scrolling down. John Miller says, so should your art average in a diagonal line on your graph then?
Yes.
Yeah.
As you gotta try your best to keep getting better, otherwise.
And regardless of how hard you try, it's gonna be scattered.
Yeah, it's not always gonna be up. There's gonna be downs, ups. It's gonna be a roller coaster. Mm-hmm.
Luabella says, when you play the game of art, you either win or just don't make as much money. No. Well, no.
Yes.
Wait, you either win or you don't.
I mean, that's with anything, though, art-wise.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Either win.
Picasso didn't make any money until he was dead.
I know, because that's what I was thinking of. Like, there's so many great artists that didn't make money. I don't think money should define success.
Yes.
So I still think you can win and lose in art, but to lose, I feel like, is just giving up. Mm-hmm. The only way to lose in that game of art is to just give up. But if you keep trying, like, you're going to win in some regard along the way. I don't think there's, like, one point where, like, I won. Like, yes, that was it. That was my victory lap. No, it's going to be constant, and you'll lose along the way, but you'll win as well. Yeah. It's like you're constantly playing little games.
Downs.
Yeah. Lopapisa says, Tim, hit me up on Facebook if you still want to sell me that print. Oh, I will. I know I'm the worst at getting back to people.
Bad.
I can admit that. Lights and Sea says, can we talk about how much fan art making is too much versus original character stories?
It really depends. It really, really depends, because how much do you like making fan art? Are you enjoying making fan art? If you're enjoying making fan art, just make fan art. But if there's something else you want to do, then you have to prioritize that other thing over your fan art.
I would say, like, what's your objective? If it's to make money, like when I was at doing conventions, I did a lot of fan art. And I knew that would bring in people because it was instant to recognize.
It's easy to recognize.
And I understood that. And to me, that was kind of playing the game, but it wasn't like malicious way, because I was doing fan art of things I liked. So if people came to my booth, I could talk to them about it. Yes. At the time, I really liked League of Legends. I did a lot of League of Legends fan art. And I didn't feel guilty about it. The only thing I would say is when I started introducing some of my original drawings, the experience of selling an original drawing versus a fan art piece, it was like tenfold. And I think that's why over time I kind of switched to an all original booth.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't regret selling fan art one bit because I learned so much from doing it. So I think it depends on person to person. Like
Yeah.
what Keith said, if you really enjoy doing it, then keep doing it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, if it is just to make money, which I do feel I fell under a little bit, then you should kind of reprioritize why are you doing this art in the first place. And then doing original character, I think everyone should do original stuff, whether it's their stories or have something that is uniquely theirs, because then it just tells more about who they are as an
Yeah.
artist. So, and I'm always more curious to see that, like James Zapata and
Like-
his Moon and Crow. I want to see that become a movie.
I want to know more about this person that does this art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually through the original stuff and not through their fan art.
Yeah. Ella Simone 1 says, when will your sketchbook 2 be on your Etsy shop? I want it so badly. It'll be this month. It is on a boat.
It's on a boat.
It's on a boat.
It's on a boat.
So hopefully soon. Arts or
Arl.
WTF LOL says, if it's not way out of subject, does anyone have any good tips to do more flexible in perspective and drawings? I feel like my art is getting too plain or 2D with just front and side view, and I don't really know how to approach more exciting angles. One, use reference.
Yes.
And trust me, I grew up only drawing orthographic, and if you know 3D, orthographic is more like flat.
Yeah.
So like if you looked at a person, their toes and their head would be both facing you, but if you drew it in perspective, you would see the top of their feet.
One would be bigger
Yeah.
compared to the other.
You would view it differently. And if you go into any 3D program or just even Google, type orthographic versus perspective, you'll see instantly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want some more interesting angles, you got to break that front and side view. That is such a concept artist way of drawing. And I'm guilty of that because
Yeah.
I'm a concept artist in a lot of CG Cookie projects.
I'm really guilty of it too.
So if you think your stuff is looking like that, grab whatever camera angle you're using and like tilt it way up or
Yeah.
tilt it way low. Like think of it as a visual camera,
Think
like
of
the
it
window.
as MySpace angles.
Yeah, like how would you take your picture, you know?
Hey.
Okay. Spyro says, what if I know something is wrong in my art but can't really figure out what that is exactly? That's good.
Yeah.
I need you to watch. Actually, I have a little short I'm going to have you watch. And this talks about how. Oops. Okay, I'm going to put it in the comments section. So it's called The Gap.
Purdy.
So essentially what this is you can recognize that you have better taste than what you're able to produce on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And you are working, you're like, man, I know this is bad and I can see what I want to do, but I just can't get it. And they talk about how that is a great thing. That means your level of output doesn't match your taste level.
Mm-hmm.
And you always want your taste level to be a little higher than what you're able to produce because
Yeah.
then you'll keep
Because
getting better
that's
and better.
what's really going to keep pushing you to get better.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so important to continue learning so that you can see that, oh, this could use improvement. I can still get better.
Yeah.
It's bad when you run out of resources and you just
And actually, this is another one where we see a lot of artists, and I never think it's good to talk down to an artist, especially to their face. That doesn't help anyone, and just makes you
unless
look
you
better.
know them and they're willing to take the critique. But if they're not, like
Oh,
your
yeah.
friend,
Like, if they're
don't say
willing to take the
anything.
critique, be hard on them.
Yeah.
Because there are some artists where they can't recognize that their quality isn't that great.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this sometimes at conventions, and when you talk to them, it's like they don't even recognize how technically wrong a lot of their work is, whether it's the lighting or the way that they are shading. There are things that are obvious amateur mistakes, but since they probably don't have a lot of artists in their life giving them feedback, maybe they just have a lot of sugarcoaters, or they just have a lot of people that don't know art, and they're just like, oh man, that's great, that is awesome, or like, yeah, keep going, I can't wait to see what you do next.
You're perfect.
And if there's anything that, at least I feel like you would agree, if there's anything that we've learned from doing art for so long and reaching an Instagram following count where there's a lot of feedback that's very positive, and sometimes that can get to your head.
Yeah.
And I feel like
It's
you think you're
the
good
best of
enough,
the
or
best,
everything that you're
or-
producing is great, where sometimes then you'll have like this, you zoom out and really look at your work and be like, man, I guess this isn't as great as people are saying, but they just want to encourage me, or they just want to keep pushing me because they like the work, but they don't really understand of how detrimental that can sometimes be just to be like, great work. Where that's why you need to have friends in your life that are willing to give you that critique, that constructive critique.
Or at least just like find a forum somewhere
Oh.
where you'll let yourself be vulnerable for a moment and let people critique your work.
Yeah. Because I will say, I think the more you become a known artist, I feel like you build up this weird armor where you feel like impenetrable to critique, or like if they
Yeah.
don't like my art, well, that's just their taste or whatever. But every now and then you have to realize that maybe you're deflecting what they're saying because you don't want to hear it, or you don't want to believe that there's stuff that is wrong in your own work.
Yeah.
And you need to, take that humble pill every now and then and be like, okay, they're right. And even actually, my mom was the best example where I did a new swordplay drawing about a year ago with Nate, and she looked at it, didn't even say good job. It was just, Tim, that hand mark on the window is wrong. I was like, oh snap! Like someone not even familiar with the art world just gave me like the most
Yeah.
blunt critique, and yeah, she was right. It was way off, and I didn't even recognize it, and that's why you can't just blow off anyone's critique, because someone that might not know art might actually give you a more refined critique. It's kind of like how the best movie reviewers are the ones that don't make movies.
I think it's so great to be able to be open to taking critiques instead of trying to defend yourself. Because when you take critiques, maybe the first time you hear it, it won't affect you, but then maybe it'll kind of linger, and it might like change your perspective on how you do things, or in like the best of ways, not like in a bad way. There are some people that'll try to critique you in like a non-helpful way, so I mean, it really depends what kind of advice you want to let in, what kind of advice you don't want to let in.
Let's do like maybe 5 more questions here. Okay. Tijel says, if bananas were alive, how many legs would they have? 5. Lights and C says, thanks. Fade the Laliq says, I'm a computer science student, so I don't have as much time as I would like to for creating art. Is it still feasible to think of pursuing an art career? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are passionate enough about doing art, you will make it the lifestyle that you live.
Yes.
I've always felt that way, and I think it's been proving itself over and over with not only the friends I meet, but the friends that, or the art friends that I've had that maybe didn't enjoy it as much, or they thought they enjoyed it. Especially in college, I saw this all the time. And then after college ended, they fell into more normal jobs, and they weren't art related because they didn't have that passion. But if you are passionate enough about it, you'll be fine. Just not only do you need passion, though, you need hard work. So put in the time and
By
effort.
Spectre. I made a lot of still life drawings with my teacher, but want to create more art out of still life. Do you have any tips on that? By the way, thank you both of you. Having a great time listening.
Oh, well, thank you.
Like out of still life, so you want to make art that's not just from still life? Is that the question?
But I want to create more art from out of still life. Then just create more art out of still life. I think when you're doing it, though, really focus on maybe certain parameters of like the lighting. If you're doing like a bowl of fruit, see the difference between lighting like a melon versus a grape. And look at the color palette that is there too. So like really zone in on certain areas if you're going to be doing still life drawings.
I think when you're studying something, you really need to be learning what you're studying. It's not just about copying. It's about figuring out why the lighting looks this way on this object, or why the shadow lays on this type of texture, or it's a lot of very, very deep critical thinking.
Exactly.
And then once you learn these sort of technical skills, then you can try to apply it to non-still life stuff.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more. Ella Simone says, I know that I've been asking this almost every stream, but it's only because I'm so excited to enter my first art contest. So when will the summer contest be announced? Hopefully this August. I'm waiting on, one, my 2 bosses are actually at SIGGRAPH overseas right now. But there are just a few little bugs on the contest page because it's actually on cgcookie.com. So it's not on a separate forum. It's integrated in the site, which is awesome. And hopefully late this August. That's what we're shooting for. So I'll keep you guys updated every week, and I won't try to keep you in the dark. Bunda Bunny says, suggestions on good places for critique. I do think having a good source of art friends is helpful, but even with cgcookie.com, we have the community where you can post your sketchbooks and your art. But then starting in September, every month I'm going to be doing a critique for the members on there. I'll be doing, I think, 9 users every month. So if you are a member on cgcookie.com, I will be personally giving you a critique, and that is something that you submit for, and I'll give a 10 to 20 minute critique of just your piece. So I think outside of that, though, where I used to get critique was just like random forums, I would say.
There's like conceptart.org. Is that still a thing? There's a bunch of just, if you just like look up art websites, they'll probably have a forum where you can just post art and try to get a critique.
Yeah. Oh,
yikes.
See Nightfish?
Yeah.
There are popular artists who will not stop streaming and cuss out their viewers for critiquing them. Thank you for streaming, by the way. I think
Those are the people that plateau. Just saying.
If they're taking personal offense to a critique,
it really depends on the people critiquing. It depends on the situation. Maybe there's just trolls that entered, and
it
are just
could be
saying
situational.
Really, yes, it's very.
But if it has
situational.
any merit to it, you cannot get defensive. And if this is something that we can end off with, I guess this is a perfect thing. Don't get defensive when people critique your work. Yeah. No one wins in that situation. And even if you don't agree with them, just absorb it.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes when I get critiqued, and if I don't agree with them right away, maybe later on, even like when I'm laying in bed, I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe they were right. And it becomes easier than to accept that they were right later on. Because oftentimes we're so defensive of our art, and it's like there's this personal attachment to it. And I understand that, but that doesn't mean that technically there could be things that are wrong. So yeah, you might still have that artistic drive in a piece, but technically someone could point out something that's could be improved upon.
I mean, there was the silly ones. When the collab I did with Jonas.
Oh yeah.
The girl had an extra elbow. Everyone felt like they had to critique that, and I just found it very fascinating.
Yeah.
That is almost like, do you think we actually didn't notice there was an extra elbow?
There's a difference between constructive criticism and personal taste.
Yes.
So if you don't like a weird abstract version of a character, that might just be on you. Yeah. That's not your taste level. That's not what you're used to or what you
I think it's
should
about
be expected.
Being human and thinking about what you're saying before you say it. So.
Or maybe even have that person think outside of the box.
Hey.
Like, oh, that looks interesting. Maybe they did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all we got for today. So thank you guys so much for coming to the stream. This is actually one of the more popular ones we've had in a while, and we didn't even really draw much.
Extra elbow are human.
I mean, we had pretty much every... Aw.
Oh, wait. Crystal said something?
Oh, I did not check out Peaceful Cuisine yet. I need to do that. I'm sorry. I will, though. I know, because I need to learn how to cook some better food. But anyways, thank you guys so much for coming to this weekly live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, minus 6 GMT if you're outside of the States. And I think next week we could do the fear and... What was the other one? It was fear and laziness.
Laziness.
I think we could easily have an entire stream on fear and laziness. So it's something that if you feel like you suffer from, well, we'll be doing that next week. And we'll be posting this video on YouTube tomorrow. It usually has to wait at least 24 hours, so maybe tomorrow night if you wanted to rewatch or if you missed a good chunk of the stream. And other than that, I just want to say thank you guys so much again for coming and sharing your opinions. I always like hearing your guys' feedback, and it always feels like there's good conversation going on in this stream chat. I love not only talking to you guys, but then hearing what your feedback is or your questions. They're not only just they're not like simple questions. They're always more thought out and developed questions.
And usually they might be something we don't think about. So it's even helpful to us when we're trying to be helpful to you guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's all I got. Is there anything else you want to say?
No. High five.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you next week. Yeah. Golden fridges all around. Oh, and then to Gypsy and Tijal, your golden fridges will be sending to you and you should receive them shortly. So thank you guys again. Okay.
Yay. Thanks for hanging out.
That's all I got. Okay. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, 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 bye.
Yay. We did it.
Wait, it's not over yet.
Oh. What? No.